Today, we're really getting into a foundational text for anyone interested in self-sufficiency. It's James Wesley Rawles's book, How to Survive the End of the World as We Know It. Tactics, Techniques, and Technologies for Uncertain Times. Quite a title.
It is, and it really delivers on that promise. I mean, this isn't just some casual prepper guide.
Yeah.
It lays out what Rawls himself calls Rawlesian survivalism.
Oh, wow.
And you have to understand where he's coming from.
Right. The author's background is key here, isn't it?
Absolutely. He's the founder of survivalblog.com, which is huge in that community. He's a former U.S. Army intelligence officer. He's consulted for Fortune 500 companies on security. This is someone with serious credentials. And he lives what he preaches, out at a retreat somewhere west of the Rockies.
That military intelligence and logistics background, you can really feel it in the writing. It's very tactical, almost like an engineering manual for survival. And his novel, Patriots, it sort of acts like a story version of these same principles, right?
Exactly. It puts the logistics into a narrative context. Right. So our mission today, what we want to do is really extract the core elements. We need to get past the, general anxiety about things going wrong and pull out the specific steps, the gear, the mindset Rawls lays out for surviving what he calls WTS-HTF.
When the saint hits the fan, or Tirawaki.
The end of the world as we know it.
Yeah.
We're looking for the practical, actionable stuff, the nuts and bolts.
Okay, let's start with that core philosophy. He kicks off with this idea of modern society as the broken machine. And interestingly, the breakdown doesn't always start with the bang, does it? It's something quieter.
Right, it's mass absenteeism. That's one of his key scenarios. Imagine a situation, maybe a pandemic or just widespread fear, where a significant chunk of essential workers just stop showing up.
The key cogs in the machine?
Precisely. The truckers, the power line repair crews, the people staffing distribution centers. When they're gone, the whole system grinds to a halt. Yeah. It's not slow, it's sudden.
And because everything is just in time.
Exactly. That Walmart distribution center running at 15%, the truck stop, grocery store deliveries, halted, gas stations run dry because the tanker trucks aren't running, utility repairs, forget it.
Which leads straight to yo-yo time.
Yo-yo time. You're on your own. That's the core concept. When the grid fails, when the supply lines break, the government, the infrastructure, it's not there for you. Rawls is blunt. You become your own utility company.
Meaning you provide your own water, food, heat, light.
Everything. And crucially, he warns about having cash. Enough cash on hand to cover maybe 3 or 4 months of expenses with absolutely zero income because you can't count on ATMs or credit cards working.
Okay, so that's the immediate logistical impact. But he also grounds this in a bigger picture, doesn't he? The financial system itself. He wrote this book back in 2009, right after the big financial crisis.
He did. And he called that period the Great Unraveling. His view in 2009 was that the global economy was still incredibly fragile. He saw the whole housing bubble and the cheap credit era as creating this massive, unsustainable debt bomb that hadn't fully detonated yet. He was basically predicting a long, grinding depression.
And he pointed fingers at some pretty specific financial instruments, like credit default swaps, the CDS market. Maybe explain what those are.
Sure. Think of a CDS as basically insurance on debt. If a company issues bonds, someone else can buy a CDS to get paid if that company defaults. The problem Rawls highlighted was that this market was enormous, largely unregulated, like a giant casino. And it was just one part of this even bigger derivatives market, valued then at over $600 trillion globally.
$600 trillion?
Yeah, astronomical numbers. And highly leveraged, meaning borrowed money, was amplifying potential losses. If one big player couldn't pay out on their swaps, it could trigger a domino effect, taking down major banks worldwide because they're all interconnected.
Which is why he quotes Warren Buffett calling derivatives financial weapons of mass destruction. So the threat isn't just external, like a war, it's baked into the system itself.
That's his argument. The system could collapse under its own weight. And when that happens, when the complex financial and logistical systems break down, that's when you see what he calls the thin veneer start to peel away.
The sociological part, how quickly does society degrade?
It's a pretty stark assessment. He argues that civilization, politeness, rule of law, it's just a thin layer.
And it doesn't take much to strip it away.
2 things, basically. Deprivation and removing distractions. Make people cold, wet, hungry, thirsty, tired. Then take away their TV, their internet, their beer, their drugs, whatever pacifies them. Rawls says the savage within emerges pretty quickly. Basic needs trump civility almost instantly.
And this breakdown, especially the loss of law and order when police are focused on their own families, that triggers the Golden Horde.
Right. The Golden Horde isn't just random chaos. It's a predictable sequence of events following a major grid-down scenario.
Okay, walk us through that sequence.
It starts with power failure. That almost immediately leads to municipal water failure because the pumps need electricity. Then comes food distribution disruption. That triggers a collapse of law and order. Then you get widespread fires, looting, and finally, a massive outmigration from the cities. The Golden Horde is that huge, desperate wave of people fleeing urban areas that have become unlivable basically overnight.
And the absolute linchpin holding all of this together or allowing it to fall apart is the power grid. Let's focus on that fragility.
Yeah, the grid is everything. The severity of any collapse really depends on how long the power is out. Anything more than a week, he argues, is genuinely catastrophic. You lose drinking water immediately in cities. Prisons might have electronic lock failures leading to mass escapes, and communication goes dark fast.
I thought those big batteries at the phone company's central offices lasted longer.
That's a common myth. Those massive banks of batteries, the CO batteries, they were generally designed for maybe 72 hours a week at the absolute max. And most didn't have backup generators robust enough for a long-term outage because planners just never conceived of the grid being down for weeks. So 9/11 fails, cell towers die, police radios might fail, total communication breakdown.
And he points out dependencies most people don't even think about, like natural gas.
That's a big one. You might have a gas stove, but the natural gas pipelines rely on huge electric compressor stations to maintain pressure and move the gas long distances. No grid power eventually means no gas pressure, except maybe very close to the source wells. So that's another major heating and cooking source gone for most people.
He also flags SCADA systems as a vulnerability.
SCADA. Supervisory control and data acquisition. It's the software used to remotely monitor and control critical infrastructure, power plants, water treatment, pipelines. Rawls saw this as a huge weak point. A sophisticated cyber attack, maybe from a state actor or terrorist group, could target these systems and cause cascading failures far worse than a physical attack might achieve.
And the end result of all this fragility is, well, grim.
A public health nightmare, especially in cities. Within days or a week, without power and water, no flushing toilets means sewage backup, contaminated water sources. No garbage collection means rampant disease vectors, people sharing dwindling, fouled water sources. Urban density becomes a massive liability.
It all seems to circle back to these incredibly efficient but brittle supply chains, the Kanban system.
Right, the just-in-time inventory system, adopted from Japan in the 70s. It's brilliant for saving companies money on warehousing. You only order supplies maybe twice a week, exactly when you need them. But it works only if communication and transportation are flawless.
What's the weakness then?
There's zero slack, zero buffer. The grocery store is the classic example. Decades ago, they had big back rooms, weeks of stock. Now, the back room is just where they break down pallets. What's on the shelf is literally all they have. If a truck is delayed 24 hours by a storm or fuel shortage, the shelves empty instantly. It relies on everything running perfectly.
So, summing up part one, modern life is balanced on this incredibly complex, interconnected, and fragile system, financial, logistical, even psychological. And the power grid is the key vulnerability. Pull that plug and things unravel terrifyingly fast, potentially unleashing that golden horde.
That's the core warning, yes.
Okay, that's a sobering picture. So let's pivot to Rawls' approach to dealing with this reality. It starts with a mindset shift, right? He's adamant that it's not just about accumulating gear.
Absolutely. His mantra is skills beat gadgets. He really rails against what he calls the armchair survivalist or the mall ninja. You know, the person obsessed with buying the coolest, most expensive tactical gear, loaded with accessories, but who hasn't actually learned how to use it effectively or hasn't practiced the underlying skills.
So buying the best rifle doesn't help if you can't shoot straight or maintain it under pressure.
Exactly. True preparedness comes from study, training, and most importantly, practice. Otherwise, all that expensive stuff is just dead weight when the power's out and the instructions are on a dead tablet.
And this ties into a kind of old-fashioned frugality.
Very much so. He constantly refers back to pioneer history, the lessons of the Great Depression. His other motto captures it. Use it up, wear it out, make do or do without. It's about resourcefulness, being able to repair things, improvise. That mindset reduces your reliance on constantly needing new supplies.
He even extends this self-reliance idea to politics, suggesting people should consider relocating if they feel overregulated.
Yeah, he's quite direct about what he calls the insidious tyranny of the nanny state. The complex web of regulations in many Western countries, His advice, if you feel those regulations impede your ability to prepare or live freely, is radical. Vote with your feet. Move to a location that offers more liberty and is geographically safer from the initial chaos of a collapse.
But before you make any big moves or investments, you need a plan. He insists on starting with a list of lists.
This is job one organizationally. It's not just a shopping list. It needs to be a prioritized, detailed inventory of needs, tailored specifically to your family, your climate, your geography, your medical situation, and the crucial immediate step.
Print it out.
Print out a durable hard copy. If you're a tech type with a complex spreadsheet, fine. But that laptop is a paperweight when the grid dies. Your printed list becomes your actual operational plan.
Okay, so assuming you have your list, how do you acquire the skills? What kind of practical, cost-effective training does he recommend?
He's big on accessible, certifiable skills. Start with the basics. Red Cross First Aid and CPR. Then look at community colleges. They often have great, affordable classes in practical things like welding, basic mechanics, gardening specific to your area, maybe even small engine repair.
Then for things like firearms.
He views firearms proficiency as essential, and he strongly recommends the RWVA Appleseed Project rifle matches. They offer excellent marksmanship instruction rooted in history, usually for a very low cost. It's about building fundamental skills, not just owning the hardware.
He also points to some more specialized groups.
Yes, for more advanced medical training beyond basic first aid, he suggests looking into medical corps type training, maybe through volunteer groups or specialized courses. For food preservation, he highlights the LDS church canneries. They often run classes open to the public on bulk canning and long-term storage techniques. And for really old school skills.
Mountain Man clubs.
Exactly. Groups focused on historical reenactment, like Mountain Man Rendezvous clubs. You can learn things like flint knapping, making soap from scratch, basic trapping. It's about reviving those fundamental self-reliance skills that don't depend on modern tech.
All this preparation supports the absolute foundation of survival logistics, what he calls the deep larder, food storage.
It's non-negotiable, in his view. Even if you have a great garden and some chickens, you must have a substantial food storage buffer. Why? Drought, plant disease, pests, an early frost, raids. Any number of things can wipe out your garden or livestock. You need a backup.
And how much is enough?
He sets a high bar, an honest one-year supply per person as minimum, maybe more.
And it's not just for your immediate family?
No, his philosophy is broader. The deep larder should ideally be deep enough to support your core group, maybe some trusted neighbors, and potentially even a few legitimate refugees you might take in. True long-term self-sufficiency, he argues, comes from having both stored food and the ongoing ability to grow your own food, especially grains and vegetables.
Which makes seeds incredibly important.
Critically important. And specifically, non-hybrid, open-pollinated seeds. Because those are the seeds you can save year after year to guarantee future harvests. He says they are arguably more important than the food you have stored right now.
Okay, mindset established, initial logistics planned. Now we get to what Rawls calls the most important decision, the retreat location. It's all about demographics, isn't it?
Location, location, location. It's paramount. And he's very clear. This isn't just about finding a nice cabin in the woods. It needs to be a prepared, defensible redoubt. The core strategy is simple. Fewer people equals fewer problems. And fewer people watching your preparations and supplies.
He gives some pretty specific geographic advice, at least for the U.S.
He does. He argues that being west of the Missouri River statistically reduces your chances of encountering large mobs of looters during a major collapse. And if you're currently in a city, your retreat needs to be at least one full tank of gas away, preferably 300 miles or more. Just being in a remote corner of a populated state isn't enough isolation for him.
And it's not just about people, but also about avoiding certain infrastructure risks.
Right. Long-term thinking. He points to the Northeast U.S., for example, relying heavily on nuclear power, almost 50% of their electricity. He sees that as an unacceptable dependence on complex, potentially vulnerable systems. Also, you absolutely must research prevailing wind patterns and avoid being downwind of major nuclear targets, like those missile silo fields in the Dakotas, Wyoming, Colorado. Fallout is a real long-term threat.
Once you've picked a general region, you need to analyze how people will move in a panic. He calls this channelization or lines of drift.
Yeah, this is straight out of military police planning. When a mass exodus from cities happens, people won't spread out evenly. They'll take the path of least resistance, the major highways, the key mountain passes like Snoqualmie near Seattle or Donner Pass in California. These lines of drift will become incredibly congested, dangerous choke points.
So the strategy is to avoid those main routes.
Precisely. You need to identify the bypassed zones. These are areas located between the primary lines of drift, maybe areas with winding mountain roads, river crossings without bridges, just generally poor access. These are the places the initial waves of refugees and looters are likely to skip over. It's about finding isolation without being completely inaccessible to yourself.
This brings up the big choice. An isolated remote retreat versus trying to make do in a town. The trade-offs seem huge.
They are stark. The isolated retreat offers clear advantages for pure self-sufficiency. Space for serious gardening, livestock, even row crops like wheat. Easier sanitation. You can stockpile supplies in bulk without prying eyes. And critically, you have the freedom to make significant security upgrades, ballistic protection, anti-vehicle barriers. You can build a real fortress.
Whereas the in-town option sounds incredibly constrained.
It is. Privacy is minimal. Bringing in supplies has to be done sneakily, probably at night. Fuel storage is severely limited by fire codes. You can't practice shooting. Livestock is usually out, maybe some rabbits or chickens if you're lucky. And the big risks. Higher chance of disease spreading, burglary, and potentially government confiscation of supplies later on. Rawls says you need to be clearly one or the other, remote or in town. Suburban sprawl is the worst of both worlds.
Which leads to the riskiest option, hunkering down in a major city. Rawls seems pretty pessimistic about surviving a full collapse in, say, downtown LA or New York.
His odds are stated as very low. But if you are stuck, security becomes absolutely everything. Forget standard wooden doors, you need steel doors, properly installed. Just bracing a wood door won't cut it against determined people. In apartment buildings, he suggests the 3rd to 5th floors are often the safest, ideally in solid concrete buildings without balconies, which offer easy access points.
And for personal defense in that urban environment, pre-collapse, where firearms might be restricted.
He suggests looking into the legality of high-capacity pepper spray, specifically the bear repellent formulations. Things like Guard Alaska, with a high percentage of OC, the active ingredient. They can create a barrier, are non-lethal, and might be more legally defensible in a crowded setting before total lawlessness breaks out.
But the biggest urban challenge seems to be staying warm in winter, if the power's out. Those fuel storage limits sound brutal.
They're a killer. Most city fire codes limit you to maybe a gallon or 2 of kerosene or a small propane tank, not nearly enough for winter heating. Rawls offers a really clever, low-tech workaround. The room within a room.
You mean literally setting up a tent inside your apartment?
Pretty much. Like a small tent pitched under a sturdy dining table. Even if the apartment temperature drops drastically, your trapped body heat alone can keep that small enclosed space significantly warmer, maybe in the 40s or 50s Fahrenheit.
And you can boost that.
Yes, drape the whole thing, inside and out, with Mylar space blankets. They reflect your body heat back at you. And he notes that carefully burning a single candle inside that small space can add another 5-10 degrees. But obviously, extreme caution is needed for fire safety. And post-collapse, any light or noise discipline failure makes you a target. Total blackout conditions are essential.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty logistics, the deep Larder specifics. Rawls provides actual numbers here, doesn't he?
Oh, yes. Very specific quantities and storage advice for his top 10 essentials.
Starting with salt, 10 pounds per person seems like a lot. Why so much?
Well, first, it's essential for nutrition and cooking, but it's also vital for preserving food-thinking meats. And less obviously, you can use it to create salt licks to attract game animals near your retreat. So it's multi-purpose, hence the large quantity. It's also a great barter item.
Okay, then the major staples, rice and wheat. What's the difference in storing them?
Rice is good, about 30 pounds per adult per year. Stores for maybe 8 years. But wheat, or other hard grains like millet or oats, is the real long-term workhorse. He recommends 220 pounds per adult per year. And stored properly as whole kernels, it can last 30 years or more.
But the critical point is whole grain.
Right. Absolutely non-negotiable. Never store flour. It goes rancid in just 2-3 years. You must store the whole grain. You can either soak the wheat berries for a day or so to make them edible, very nutritious, high fiber, or ideally, you need a sturdy hand-crank grain mill to grind it fresh as needed.
Wow, hand grinding 220 pounds of wheat per person. That really drives home the labor involved.
It does. And speaking of overlooked items, he stresses fats and oils. Many prepackaged food storage plans skimp on these, but they're vital for calories and nutrition. He suggests things like olive oil, canned butter, which stores surprisingly well, better than shortening or lard, and even mentions raising oily animals or using rendered fat like bear grease if necessary.
What about pre-made meals? Any warnings there?
Temperature is the enemy of MREs. The storage life plummets at high temperatures. Store them at 100 degrees, they might only last a couple of years. Store them cool, around 70 degrees, they can last almost 10 years. Big difference. Also, MREs are notoriously low in fiber, so if you rely on them, you absolutely need to stock fiber supplement to avoid serious digestive issues.
For people storing both grains themselves, what are the best practices?
Buying bulk wheat, rice, beans is way cheaper than pre-canned stuff. Best containers are either sturdy, galvanized metal trash cans, which are rodent-proof, or food-grade plastic buckets with tight-fitting lids. But the most important step before sealing is removing oxygen.
To kill bugs.
Exactly. Insect eggs and larvae. You either use oxygen absorber packets placed inside the container before sealing, or you can displace the oxygen with dry ice. Put a chunk of dry ice in the bottom, fill with grain, leave the lid slightly loose until the dry ice sublimates completely, then seal it tight. This step is crucial for long-term storage.
And the famous pickle pail warning.
Yes. A practical tip. Never, ever reuse plastic buckets that previously held pickles to store rice or grains. The plastic absorbs that pickle smell and taste, and you'll never get it out. Your rice will taste faintly of dill forever. Details matter.
Okay, shifting to water. What's the absolute ideal source for a rural retreat?
Gold standard according to Rawls. A gravity-fed spring. Requires no power, low maintenance, just pipe it downhill to your retreat. Simple, reliable.
But most rural properties rely on wells, right?
Okay.
Which usually need electricity.
Correct. Grid-powered well pumps are a huge vulnerability. The best solution, though expensive, is redundancy. A solar-powered photovoltaic or PV pump system combined with a large elevated water storage tank or cistern.
Why elevated?
For gravity flow. If the cistern is high enough, he suggests aiming for 35 to 60 feet of vertical head or height difference. The water flows down to your house taps using gravity alone. No electricity needed for daily water pressure. The solar panels just keep the cistern topped up whenever the sun shines.
For those on a tighter budget, he describes building a simple filter, the Big Berkey clone.
It's a great DIY project. You get hold of some high-quality ceramic filter elements, like the white Berkefeld ones. They're excellent at removing bacteria, chlorine, sediment. You install these in the bottom of one food-grade bucket, which then sits on top of another clean bucket. Pour dirty water on the top, clean water drips into the bottom. He suggests 4 elements for a decent flow rate. Very effective, much cheaper than buying a commercial unit.
What about the worst-case scenario? Power's out indefinitely, and your electric submersible pump is stuck down the well.
Then you need a manual way to get water out. Assuming you can pull the pump and pipe out first, you use what he calls a well torpedo or bullet bucket. It's basically a narrow cylinder, often made of PVC pipe, with a simple one-way flapper valve at the bottom. You lower it down the well shaft on a rope. It fills with water. The valve closes as you pull it up. It's slow, hard work, but it gets you water from deeper wells without power.
And for disinfecting large amounts of questionable water.
Basic granular pool shot calcium hypochlorite. It's the cheapest, most concentrated form of chlorine available for bulk treatment. A single bucket can treat thousands of gallons. The method is specific. Dissolve 1 heaping teaspoon of the granules into 2 gallons of water to make a concentrated stock solution. Then, to treat your drinking water, you add 1 part of that stock solution to 100 parts of the water you need to purify. Let it sit, test if needed. Very effective.
Moving on to power. Rawls learned something specific about batteries from soldiers in Iraq.
Yeah, they apparently stress that spare batteries are genuine force multipliers. If your night vision or radios run out of juice, you effectively need more soldiers and supplies to cover the same ground safely. This highlights why stockpiling batteries is crucial. He recommends focusing on rechargeable low self-discharge, LSD, nickel metal hydride, EM siege types.
What's special about those?
Low self-discharge means they hold their charge much, much longer while just sitting on the shelf, compared to older, rechargeable, or even standard alkaline batteries. Essential for long-term storage. And the simple tip: store all your smaller batteries in the refrigerator to maximize their shelf life even further.
For solar power systems, what's his preferred setup?
He likes systems that are grid-connected but standalone capable, meaning ideally you have a system that can feed excess power back to the utility grid when it's running, potentially lowering your bills. But crucially, it must have the switches and inverters needed to completely disconnect from the grid and power your retreat independently during an outage. And very importantly, don't rely only on electric appliances like grain mills. Always have a manual backup.
Generator choice: diesel or gasoline?
Diesel, hands down, for longevity. He points out that heavy-duty, low RPM diesel generators can last 15,000 or even 20,000 hours, whereas a typical gasoline generator might only last 2,000 or 3,000 hours. Plus, diesel fuel and propane store much longer and more safely than gasoline. And bolt that generator down. They vibrate and can walk away. Plus, they're a prime target for theft.
He also offers a clever trick for getting fuel if the gas station pumps are dead.
Right. If the grid is down, the electric pumps at gas stations won't work. But the fuel is still in the underground tanks. If those tanks aren't buried too deep, usually less than 14 or 15 feet, you can potentially access it. You need a simple 12-volt DC fuel transfer pump, powered by a car battery or jump pack, and a long hose. Drop the hose down the fill pipe into the tank, and you can siphon the fuel out manually. Obviously, this assumes the station is abandoned and safe to approach.
Okay, let's transition to personal well-being and security. Starting with health and fitness. This isn't about aesthetics, is it?
Not at all. It's purely practical. Rawls emphasizes basic physical fitness, strength, cardiovascular health, flexibility. Why? Because survival involves hard physical labor. You need the strength, especially hand and forearm strength, to haul those 5-gallon buckets of water, firewood, or sacks of grain day after day. Plus, staying fit and maintaining a healthy weight supports your immune system, which is critical when sanitation might be poor and medical help unavailable.
He details a specific medical kit based on recommendations from an EMT contributor. What are some key items beyond basic first aid?
The focus is definitely on trauma and hygiene for austere conditions. Things like EMT shears heavy-duty scissors to cut clothing away from wounds quickly. For closing wounds, he strongly favors steri strips over simple butterfly bandages and recommends applying them with tincture of benzoin first. Yeah, it's a sticky substance you paint on the skin. It makes the steri strips adhere much more aggressively, which is vital if the person is active or the conditions are dirty.
What about common medications?
Definitely Benadryl, diphenhydramine. It's multi-purpose, good for allergic reactions, helps with colds, and critically, it's a first-line defense if someone is showing early signs of a severe allergic reaction, anaphylaxis. Also, Imodium for diarrhea. Sounds minor, but uncontrolled diarrhea leads to dehydration very quickly, which can be fatal in a survival situation with limited clean water.
Sanitation becomes a massive issue immediately if sewers fail.
Huge. Disease spreads rapidly through contaminated water and waste. For human waste, if flushing toilets are out, the suggestion is a dedicated 5-gallon bucket with a toilet seat lid. After each use, you layer in lime, wood ash, or even just dirt and sawdust to control odor and help break it down. For rural areas, a trench is an option, but it absolutely must be dug at least 300 feet away from any, spring or surface water. And a crucial protocol for any group. Strict quarantine, 2 weeks minimum for any newcomers arriving at the retreat to prevent introducing outside diseases.
Back to wound care. What's the priority when cleaning a wound in the field?
Time spent flushing is more important than the solution used, within reason. Clean tap water, if available, is often fine. The key is to irrigate the wound thoroughly for several minutes, to physically wash out as much bacteria and debris as possible. For closing minor wounds, there's the 6-hour rule, meaning you generally want to get a minor laceration cleaned and closed, sutured, stapled, glued, or taped within 6 hours of the injury to significantly reduce the risk of infection taking hold.
And if you don't have sutures or staples?
Rawls mentions medical superglue like Dermabond if you have it. If not, the absolute last resort, low-tech option, duct tape. Tear off narrow strips, use them like steri strips to pull the wound edges together. But, and this is important, leave tiny gaps between the strips so the wound can still drain and breathe a little. Don't seal it completely airtight with tape.
What about people with chronic medical conditions? This seems like a huge challenge.
It is. For someone needing a CPAP machine for sleep apnea, they'd need a reliable off-grid power source, likely solar PV, dedicated to running it. Insulin requires refrigeration, so again, a small, dedicated solar-powered fridge is essential. For dialysis patients, the outlook Rawls presents is grim. He suggests that relocating before a collapse to areas known for very stable independent power grids, maybe Hawaii, or near facilities with robust natural gas backup generators might be the only viable long-term option, as home dialysis becomes nearly impossible without reliable power and supplies.
Let's shift gears to physical security. Layered defense, making the retreat hard to approach and breach.
It's a defense in-depth strategy starting far out and working inwards. Outer layer, maybe buried seismic sensors to detect movement, then physical barriers like thorny hedges, like Osage orange, or sturdy fences and gates, maybe with spiked tops. Closer in, motion detectors using something like MURS radio frequencies, license-free, good range for alerts.
But closer to the actual building.
Concealment trees and shrubs to break up sightlines, but also open ground immediately around the house for clear fields of view and fire. Then a strong chain-link fence, maybe with tanglefoot wire, barbed wire coils, laid on the ground inside it. More thorny bushes right under windows. And the final layer, heavy-duty steel shutters or bars on all windows and reinforced doors.
Building such a visible defense makes secrecy paramount, doesn't it? OPSC.
Operational security. It's absolutely critical. Rawls hammers the keep your preparation secret from virtually everyone outside your trusted core group. Two main reasons. First, you don't want desperate neighbors seeing you as the local hoarder with all the supplies when things go bad. Second, you want to avoid potential confiscation of supplies or firearms by authorities acting under emergency powers, like what controversially happened in some areas after Hurricane Katrina.
And security lighting strategy changes drastically after a collapse.
It completely flips. Before Teowak, lots of lights act as a deterrent because you can still call for help. After Teowaki, if you're the only one with lights on because you have off-grid power, you're basically advertising, hey, I have resources, to everyone for miles around. So passive defense becomes key. Strict light discipline, blackout curtains reinforced with plastic sheeting. If you have night vision gear, you can use infrared floodlights to illuminate your property. You can see perfectly, but to the naked eye, it's total darkness. And you can use the NVGs to check your own house for light leaks.
For storing valuables securely inside, he describes a specific hiding place method.
Yeah, the Rawls through the looking glass cache. It's designed mainly for hiding things like precious metals. You find an interior partition wall where a mirror would look natural. Use a stud finder to locate the studs, then carefully cut out a section of drywall between them. Remove insulation if necessary. Place your valuables inside the wall cavity. Then mount a large mirror over the opening using standard mirror clips. Done well, the wall looks completely normal. Pretty clever use of misdirection.
Finally, let's talk about long-term economic survival. Financial security, barter, and ballistic womp. Rawls is not optimistic about fiat currency, is he?
Extremely pessimistic. He expected continued high inflation, potentially leading to hyperinflation, rendering the dollar worthless like the Zimbabwean dollar became. His advice was, and likely still is, to convert wealth into tangible assets. Productive farmland, physical gold and silver, and firearms and ammunition. He particularly favored silver over gold for barter potential due to its lower unit cost in industrial uses.
And he recommends a very specific form of silver for bartering.
Yes, for maximum utility in small transactions, he strongly recommends pre-1965 U.S. silver dimes. They contain 90% silver, they're instantly recognizable to most Americans, and they represent a small, divisible unit of value. He even gives the metric. A standard $1,000 face value bag of silver dimes weighs about 52 pounds and contains 715 troy ounces of pure silver. Useful for accounting.
And ballistic wampum, that's ammo as currency.
Exactly. A term popularized by Jeff Cooper. Ammunition, especially in common calibers, holds its value well, stores for decades if kept dry, and is likely to be in high demand. Rawls suggests stocking common types. .22 long rifle is king due to versatility and low cost, then centerfire rifle rounds like .308, popular pistol calibers like 9mm, and 12-gauge shotgun shells. Have enough of your own defense needs, he suggests. 2,000 rounds per primary rifle, 800 per primary handgun, and then stock extra specifically as ballistic wampum for trade.
What about skills for barter? What's most valuable when the grid is down?
He emphasizes skills that require minimal ongoing raw materials and rely on older, simpler technology. Think of things like septic tank pumping, locksmithing, mechanical locks, small engine repair for generators, chainsaws, gunsmithing, maybe basic veterinary skills, or even reloading ammunition if you have the components. The fundamental rule of bartering, he stresses, is never trade hard for soft. Don't trade durable, high-value, compact items like silver coins, ammo tools, medicine for bulky, perishable, or less useful items like food, unless you desperately need it right now, or comfort items, unless the quantity is overwhelmingly in your favor and you can use it immediately. Protect your core assets.
Well, that was quite a dive. We've covered a huge amount of ground, from the fragility of global finance and supply chains, the thin veneer of society, all the way down to specific instructions for building water filters, using pool shock safely, the benefits of silver dimes, and hiding valuables behind a mirror.
It really is an exhaustive manual. Rawls forces you to think through almost every conceivable failure point, from childbirth complications to defending against intruders using infrared lighting. It's about moving past vague worry and into detailed, practical, almost engineering-level planning.
So for everyone listening, thinking about all this, if you had to boil down Rawls's vast advice into one single crucial takeaway, one provocative thought to leave people with, what would it be?
I think it has to be the concept of the come-as-you-are collapse. Rawls strongly advises people to relocate and live at their retreat full-time if possible. Why? Because if a major crisis hits while you're still planning your escape from the city, your plan has a harsh reality check.
Which is?
You will almost certainly have only one trip out. Traffic will likely gridlock immediately. Roads might be blocked by authorities or become too dangerous. You won't be able to go back for a second load. So anything you haven't pre-positioned at your retreat, anything that doesn't fit in that single vehicle load, or onto your back in your bag if you end up on foot, Plan D is effectively gone forever. Preparation means accepting the brutal finality of that one-trip reality. Everything needs to be ready before it happens.
An intense but very practical final thought.